Happy November 14th, my little friends. Today I want to talk to you about having a purpose for reading. If you're going to do what's called close reading, which means you're doing a whole lot of thinking for every little bit of text, if you remember our close reading salad, you can think of it as 1 cup of thinking at least for every half cup of text. So for every little bit of text you read, you want to do loads and loads of thinking, having questions, and so on. That's called close reading, and it's a very analytical form of reading. Not necessarily how you read everything, but certainly how you read things that you're doing for school. Usually you have some sort of academic purpose for it. So step 1 in this type of close reading or setting a purpose for reading is to establish your purpose. Okay, so figuring out, okay, I'm going to read today. We're going to be reading a commencement address by Steve Jobs, and we are going to be some examples of things that our purpose might be finding information, answering questions, understanding the author's point of view or perspective. So what we're actually going to be watching today and reading and analyzing is a commencement address or a speech, and so that's generally going to be really heavy on point of view. The next step is to notice details about the text, such as the title, author's name, the date published, and the type of text, such as fiction or non-fiction. So I'm just going to jump on over and to the copy that you're going to have. And if I look at the title, this is Steve Jobs, 2005 Commencement Address at Stanford University. Okay. So Steve Jobs, I know, founded Apple, which makes iPhones and iMacs and MacBooks and all those. He was the man who created that company. He gave a speech way back in 2005, so that was 11 years ago. And commencement is graduation. So last year you guys all were promoted from 5th grade, so maybe you might have had some people who spoke at that event. This is kind of like that, only at a really big university like Stanford, they get in big celebrities like Steve Jobs. Okay, so then the speech, here we go. I'm just clicking that over. Let me move this out of the way. I've numbered the paragraphs for you. So this is a speech. It's going to be, I'm skimming, okay. Today I want to tell you 3 stories from my life, just 3 stories. Okay, so if I go back to my purpose for reading, I know it's nonfiction because it's the story of his life versus fiction, which would be something made up. I know he's going to be telling me his point of view or perspective on his life. So he's looking back, he's being reflective about the life he's lived. I know his name. I know that he created Apple. So I'm setting a purpose for reading before I get started. I'm understanding, okay, so I'm going to be hearing Steve Jobs, the man who created the iPhone, who created the company that created the iPhone and the iPod and the MacBook, and getting some information about his life and maybe what he learned from his life. The next thing would be step 3 in having a purpose for reading is to have some questions in mind. Okay, so first one, obviously, you always want to have is, what's the gist of this article? What are some ideas it's going to present? Then as I'm reading, what words and phrases stand out to me? Who's the audience here? Now in this case, we know it's people who were graduating from Stanford University in 2005, because that's the forum. And what is the author's point of view? Maybe it's also his point of view on the topic. So this is, remember, a graduation. So he's maybe kind of trying to give these young people who are graduating from college some of his wisdom or experience, some things to think about. Step 4 is to think deeply about the text by analyzing the details you found in answer to your questions. Okay, So after we've done all of these things, and we've paid attention to the main idea, and who's he talking to, and what are some words that jump out, we're going to go back and look really closely at the text and ask questions like, what details are most important to the main idea? So if I say the main idea is blah, 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 then I need some details in the text that tell me that. Okay, just like when we looked at photos and we said, this man in this photo is depressed. And the details that tell me that he's depressed are that he's frowning and he's slouched in his chair, and the colors of the painting are all really dark blue, if you remember that Van Gogh painting that we looked at. So that's the kind of thing that you want to do. I'm going to say the main idea, what Steve Jobs is trying to tell these graduates is that blah, blah, blah. So what are some details that are really important to whatever we think the main idea of the speech is? Why does the author use certain words and figurative language? Okay, so we've been studying figurative language. We've established that there's a reason why an author would choose certain words. Instead of just saying what they mean, why they would choose figurative language instead. So we have to analyze if they're using figurative language, why are they using figurative language? What are they trying to tell me? How is the story structured to support the main idea? So this gets really more into like organization. How is the author organized their story? So if I go back over to the text again real quick, I know one thing he says is, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. And then paragraph 2 is, the first story is about connecting the dots. So I'm going to bet that if I scroll down, there's a part where he says, my second story is about love and loss. See that right here? And I bet if I scroll down, since it says there's only 3 stories, here we go. My third story is about death. So he's giving this speech, he's breaking it, one of the ways he's structuring it to make his message more clear is to break it into 3 separate little small stories. Okay, let me go back. Alright, just to review. So my close reading salad here is that for all these little tiny bits of every little bit of text, I'm going to do a whole lot of thinking. Okay? That's how you really get to be very analytical, is by asking questions, going back, rereading, and paying attention to details and thinking about what they mean. So, your very first step is just to establish your purpose for reading, okay? I just want to know what is Steve Jobs' point of view and his wisdom that he wants to give to these graduates. So now, I want you to turn and talk to your partner about how to use and the purpose of this close reading salad when we're reading. So, let me rephrase that. Why do we establish a purpose for reading before we get started? What is the benefit to you of going through these steps when you're reading in a class or an academic setting? Okay, go ahead and have your conversation.